every single artist has struggled. And the only way they've gotten out of it is by not sitting in that struggle alone. So make sure that you find somebody, anybody who will be able to stand with you and help you, whether you need a deadline or a little person to give you a push to get something done. If you just need someone to read it, to validate it, to make sure you know that it's there and it's heard for a minute, whatever that might look like. I know I would not have a book where it is now, as doing as well as it is now, without a writing group who supported me over the years. I would definitely tell them to take a look at that. And just remember that books are vital to our existence. We've been storytellers since the beginning, and to have the accessibility and the network of today's world to find anything you need, realize that you overcoming struggles in your life has never been done the way that you've done it.
Okay, well, we have a treat today. I have the author of The Rebel in Violet. It's trilogy. It's out. It's an international bestseller. The author is Lyon. And what I love about this, I get to interview so many authors, but I don't often get to interview writers. It's a young adult. It is fiction, and it's really fun. So Hannah, welcome to the show. And let's get into The Rebel in Violet.
Yes.
And shifting from, now you're a copywriter.
I'm a comprehensive editor. Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
And within that, then you are the wings. You are the wings underneath writers, and that you now are that international bestseller yourself. So let's get into, for budding writers out there, making the leap. How long did it take you, and how does it feel?
Oh, I love those questions. So it feels like the most terrifying and most exciting thing in the world at the same time. When you actually get to that day where your message is out in the world, where your voice is being heard, where your creativity is finally coming to fruition, it's really scary, and it's also really beautiful. So I've been able to support other authors for the last 7 years in reaching that status, and my editing has helped quite a few books hit international bestseller. And so I've loved being able to help people polish their books and find the most powerful way to share their story, so it opened doors for them in their own lives. But being able to do that for myself has been really, really scary. So I finally found the right home for my book, and that's what gave me the courage to say, you know, I can take the time to make this happen for me, and I can share my own writing, my own interpretation of who I am through a fiction magical world, and share that with everybody too.
So how long was the story inside you?
Probably 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it grew for a very long time. It was always a hobby. It was always something that came last on my list. It was always what was extracurricular. You know, it wasn't vital to my career. It wasn't vital to me building my home or my family. It was always at the end of the list, until I was able to find the right people who validated what I had to share and told me, okay, it doesn't need to sit there year after year after year. It can actually be something that connects you to people, that inspires and teaches other people, no matter what genre it is. So now it's finally arrived.
So there was a breakthrough for you.
Yeah.
And going from something that your book, your story, your characters, all of this, right? Because writing and creating fiction and bringing us into that story, that's a gift. And going from to, and a lot of nonfiction is what you were supporting, and that's what's a lot of bringing forward, that piece that you got to put yourself first. How'd that happen?
I met an incredibly talented writer in the publishing world, and she became my writing coach. I got to attend some of her events, some of her courses, And she was one of the first professionals in the publishing world, in the writing world, who actually took me seriously. And she honored what I had to say. And she saw this talent in me and was able to eventually hire me to work with her and to be her main editor. And having someone on your team who actually says, your story matters. However you share it is vital to the world. And there's no one who can share it the way you can. And so to have somebody say that to me was that breakthrough of having a partner, having a safe space, and having someone who trusts in you and believes in you. And ultimately, I've been able to be that same example for other authors and just pass that on to other people.
So you're talking community, you're talking mentorship, you're talking about getting out of your own way and not doing it alone.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lonely writing process, but to complete that and become an author, you can't do that alone.
So again, I find it fascinating because again, you're the coach, you're the cheerleader, you're the technical behind so many other great authors. I want to and so when you met your alliance, your mentor, your safe space that saw your message, and probably you didn't see it yourself, right?
No, not yet.
And from that point, how long were you supporting others and saying yes before then, after you guys met, that you said, okay, it's time?
Yeah, it was about 6 or 7 years. It took me that long to build my career as an editor, to continue my education, to help see other people launch their books into the world, and be able to build that part of my life until I got that calling saying, this. I tell people every day, don't let your writing go to wasted. Don't let it sit on your computer. Don't let it sit in a drawer. Take it out, work through the hard stuff, make it happen. And I, through those 6 or 7 years, had so many people say, well, you share about your writing every so often in events, and when's your book coming out? And I'd say, oh, it's coming. It's going to be here. I, through the years, had offers from different agents, from different publishers, but nothing felt right. Nothing felt like it was the fit. There were red flags. There were things that weren't the right place to be. So I let it go and worked on other things. And then finally one day said, this is the right home. This is the time. And I should be my word and actually have my own writing out there in the world. So it's not just sitting on a computer anymore.
So let's get into it, because I had the privilege of reviewing it and then being part of with such gratitude and privilege to be part of launch. The book is incredible. And so the audience, it's for young adults, which is my absolute favorite genre of reading fiction. Again, it goes back to sharing it with my daughter and having that shared experience, who is an avid reader. She continues telling me literary words that I don't know until she says it, like protagonist and antagonist and all kinds of like really in there writing. And so the story is exciting. It's actually a trilogy from the studio. Oh, tell us your protagonist. Where did she? It's a female heroine or tell us the story and who and what is she?
Sure. So the woman that we get to meet in The Rebel and Violet, the first book in the trilogy, her name is Angeline McKinley, and she is a single mother, and she owns an inn, a tavern in a very old, kind of dying seaside town. And she ultimately came from my inspiration, which was a question that I often asked myself when I was a teenager, which was, I don't know why, but why would someone be happy being unhappy? I would ask myself that question. Particularly a woman, what could make a woman feel that way, where they feel like the risk is never worth coming out of their unhappiness, so they remain happy, unhappy? And so that's where Angeline came from. And that's what I built her from. And her story here starts where nothing is worth that risk. She can't fight against the military leaders in her kingdom who are keeping her down. She can't expose her son to anything that could potentially take him away from her and lead to his certain death. And she can't muddle in any of the magic that's forbidden in her kingdom because she has a connection to it that she's tried to hide her whole life. So there are all these pieces of her that make her content being in a cage. And I was really fascinated with that subject and what it would take, what is it worth risking questioning everything? What makes it okay to question your whole life and risk something to be better? So that's where she comes from.
So let me ask you, this speaks to so many women as they're rediscovering who they are, as they lost themselves along their journey, and the first thing that they lose is their joy. Mm-hmm. So within that, the parallel of even your own story of standing in, discovering or bringing your gift forward and not leaving it on the computer. What do you say to, I love this. This is not just about writers. This is about everyone. And my belief that everyone has their gift and only they can bring it forward. What would you say to them sitting out there saying, read the book and yes, bring your gift forward. And this is how you can start today.
I think the key is always to never stop writing. That's what I always tell people. And it doesn't matter if it's writing that the world never sees, even if you don't look at it again after you do it, because the habit of writing and the process of writing and sharing your story in some way is extremely healing. It puts things in perspective. It takes them out of you and helps you move beyond any challenge that you might have faced, that you might be writing about, that you might interpret through fiction, if that's what you choose to do. But if you stop, that's the end of the process, right? Anytime you can find that balance between work, between regular life, and between that writing, even if you give yourself 5 minutes, you're not giving up and you're still moving forward. So that balance is extremely elusive. And that's what I always tell all of my authors right away is achieving that with the help of the right team is what's going to ultimately get you to that space where you're from start to finish. You have a draft of a book. You can move forward with a story. You can polish it. You can share it. And then you're not sitting there with the 9 out of 10 people who want to write a book and only one of them actually gets it done. You get to make it to the finish line, and the miracles you see, the rewards that you have on the other side of that, I can now attest to how amazing that is.
Okay, so that brings up the next question. What have you experienced since the book and the celebration of the book? And what's your favorite review you've gotten or feedback?
My favorite thing that I have gotten so far is noticing that people who typically don't read fantasy, they don't watch those kind of movies or those shows, they don't read those kind of books, they don't listen to those kind of stories. They've come to me and they've told me, I don't usually read this, but this is what I got out of it. And I want to thank you for writing this in a way that it could still speak to someone who's typically not a fantasy reader. And so it was extremely fascinating to me to have people who usually love memoirs and self-help and incredible books like that I get to work on most of the time, come to me and say they read my book and they went through it all the way to the end and they got something out of it and it taught them something or it inspired them in some way. And to see that was extremely unexpected. So I really enjoyed hearing that.
And you weren't expecting it either.
No.
Okay, so people, again, the piece of, now you've been behind many projects. The piece when your launch was approaching, and then it's out there and I can't bring it back. What did that feel like?
I think It's extremely difficult to describe, but I'd have to say that it is, it's like one of those turning points in your life. When your children are born, when you get married, a lot of people say that having a book come out is like having a baby. And I'm a young mom. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so it's very close and point in my life where I've been able to see the birth of my children and then the birth of my first book around the same time. And you're leading up to it. You want it to happen. You want it to be over. You want to move on with your life. But then every moment of that day, every moment of it actually happening is something that you're not going to forget. So a beautiful tip that my publisher gave to me was, write that stuff down on your launch day. Take notes. Write down some details, every time something comes in, every time you have a moment to take a break in between the process of the launch and seeing what happens when your words go out in the world, just write a few things down. And that helped me capture and actually honor and celebrate what was happening during that day.
Okay, well, you're leaving it there. So if we were to open up that page, what would be the first thing that jumped out of your experience in that launch? What do you remember most or vividly?
Yeah. Yes, vividly, I remember that I felt this really strong calling to go into a box of letters that I usually keep in my office, actually over my shoulder over here.
Okay, we see
And
it.
inside that box, I have letters from my aunt and from my great uncle, who used to support me as a writer when I was a kid. And I kept every kind thing they ever wrote me. I love getting words in the mail. We'd send chapters back and forth. We'd red pen through things. And they were the first people before my professional mentor came into my life who actually said, you're good at this. You could turn this into something if you stick with it, if you do the hard part, if you learn how to make yourself better, because it's not easy. But you can take that talent and you can hone it and you can turn it into something really incredible if you feel like it's an important thing to have in your life. And I went in there and I took out those letters and I kept them with me throughout that whole day, throughout the whole launch day, and just honored their commitment to me as a child, being able to keep that with me, close to me physically, and then to just remind myself of that on that launch day that, I did it, I actually made it happen. And so that was a beautiful thing.
So now that the first, it's a trilogy, right? That's not a secret. Okay. And what's next? What are you up to? And what does that look like?
Well, the second book, which is called The Strings of Fate, it will be published in March of 2024. So next spring, you'll be able to dive into the second book in the trilogy. And relatively soon, I will be able to share that the Audible version of the first book will be available. So right now, the ebook and the hardcover and paperback are out there. Actually just got my hardback copy and got to hold it in my hands the other night for the first time. It was beautiful. But I've been anxiously awaiting to share the Audible as well. So anyone who wants to know what's next, I've been just singing the praises of the incredible Audible team that we have. It's a gorgeous narrator who brings the world to life. And I know so many people out there don't have the time to sit and read a book. So if you love to listen to your books, that is going to be coming very soon.
So on this and people that are stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people stuck. And even when we don't realize we're stuck, we're often don't see it until after we break through that. What would you say to someone that is stuck in their life, is stuck in their writing, and words of encouragement or wisdom? What would you say to them?
I would say first that you're not alone, that nobody who creates any form of art, doesn't have to be writing, it could be music or dancing or sculpture or painting, whatever it is, every single artist has struggled. And the only way they've gotten out of it is by not sitting in that struggle alone. So make sure that you find somebody, anybody who will be able to stand with you and help you, whether you need a deadline or a little person to give you a push to get something done. If you just need someone to read it, to validate it, to make sure you know that it's there and it's heard for a minute, whatever that might look like. I know I would not have a book where it is now, as doing as well as it is now, without a writing group who supported me over the years. So I would definitely tell them to take a look at that. And just remember that books are vital to our existence. We've been storytellers since the beginning, and to have the accessibility and the network of today's world to find anything you need, realize that you overcoming struggles in your life has never been done the way that you've done it. So for you to share that, however you want to share that in story, it helps us breathe. It helps everybody else be able to get through what they're getting through. And you should not hold that back. You should not keep that from us. So break through however you can.
I'm loving that. So speaking of that, can people work with you, and what would that look like?
Sure. Yeah, I do help authors of all genres. Castle Lyon Editing is the name of my company. And I work with fiction, nonfiction, children's authors, young adult authors, middle grade books, all of that beautiful stuff. I have the ability to do some really unique editing practices that have helped a lot of people. So you can usually come to me when you've got at least half of your book done, when you've got an idea of where you want things to go. And typically people will save spots with me for a certain quarter of the year. And it helps motivate them to know they have an editor waiting, to know there's someone who's going to help them to get their book to the finish line. So I talk to people for free about their books all the time. So I'm always happy to do that.
All right, good. So we're gonna have the link to the book, the Rebel in Violet. First of it, incredible book, fun to read. The character development is incredible. You're really vested in the character. I love the writing.
Thank you.
And I said that in my review. So the book link's down there. Second book's coming out in March, which is name of the second book, something Fate. What's the second book?
Strings of Fate.
Strings of Fate. Audible's coming out too. And yeah, reach out to Hannah from some editing. If you have that book in you and you're ready to get it off your computer, reach out to Hannah. Website will be down below where you can get in touch with her. And thank you for creating another book that I absolutely loved. Okay. And I can't wait for the next book. All right, everyone. Till next time.